The massive holographic display in the center of the Galactic Council chamber flickered to life, showing the approaching human vessel. Commander Zethkar of the Vorthan Empire leaned forward in his floating command chair, his four eyes narrowing as he studied the image. The ship was smaller than he had expected. Much smaller. "This cannot be correct," he muttered, his translator device converting his clicks and whistles into standard galactic speech. "Run the scan again." Lieutenant Vexana, a slender Keltharian with silver skin that shimmered under the chamber's lights, tapped her control pad with delicate fingers. "Sir, the readings are accurate. The human vessel measures approximately 800 meters in length. It appears to be traveling alone." A ripple of disbelief swept through the assembled fleet commanders. The chamber held representatives from 12 different species, each commanding massive armadas that had gathered at the edge of the Terran system. They had come expecting war, prepared for the legendary human military machine that had sparked fear across 3 galactic sectors. Admiral Korax, the hulking Bruton commander whose species stood nearly 3 meters tall and was covered in thick, armored hide, let out a deep rumbling laugh. 800 meters? My flagship alone is 12 kilometers long. Are the humans mocking us? The Sindari representative, Ambassador THYSSL, spoke through her biosuit speakers. Her species existed as a collective consciousness within a gel-like substance, and her thoughts carried the weight of 10,000 minds. Perhaps this is a psychological tactic. Humans are known for their deception. Commander Zethkar studied the tactical display more carefully. The combined fleet before them represented the largest military gathering in galactic history. 47 dreadnoughts, each capable of destroying planets. 300 battlecruisers armed with quantum torpedoes and plasma cannons. Nearly 2,000 support vessels carrying enough firepower to sterilize entire star systems. All assembled to face humanity's response to the ultimatum. The ultimatum had been simple. Humanity would surrender their rapidly expanding colonies, submit to galactic oversight, and accept limits on their technological development. The alternative was total war. Every species in the galaxy had agreed that humanity's aggressive expansion and their disturbing habit of turning impossible situations into victories made them too dangerous to ignore. "Sir," Lieutenant Vexana announced, "we're receiving a transmission from the human vessel." "Put it through." The hologram shifted to show the interior of what appeared to be a simple bridge. A human male sat in a captain's chair, wearing a plain blue uniform with minimal decoration. He looked to be middle-aged, with graying hair and calm brown eyes. Nothing about him suggested the fearsome reputation of human commanders. "This is Captain Sarah Chun of the UES Defiance." The human said in clear, unaccented galactic standard. The name and gender didn't match the appearance, causing confusion among the alien commanders. "I'm here to respond to your ultimatum." Commander Zethkar activated his communication array. "Human, I am Commander Zethkar of the Vorthan Empire. You stand before the combined might of 12 galactic civilizations. We demand your immediate surrender and compliance with our terms." The human on the screen smiled slightly. "I appreciate the dramatic presentation, Commander. Quite impressive, really. 47 dreadnoughts, if my sensors are correct. Must have taken considerable coordination to assemble this force." "You seem remarkably calm for someone facing impossible odds," Admiral Korax interjected, his massive form leaning into view of the transmission. "Oh, I wouldn't say impossible," Captain Chen replied. "Challenging, perhaps. But humans have a long history of dealing with challenging situations." Ambassador THWSSL's collective voice resonated through the chamber. "Captain, your bravado is admirable, but pointless. You command a single vessel against our entire armada. Even human stubbornness has limits." Captain Chen's expression remained unchanged. "You're absolutely right about the numbers. But you're making one crucial assumption, which is," Commander Zethkar demanded, "you assume you understand what you're facing." The transmission cut abruptly, leaving the alien commanders staring at a blank hologram. For several moments, the chamber remained silent except for the soft hum of life support systems and the occasional click of mandibles or rustle of appendages. Lieutenant Vexana broke the silence. "Sir, the human vessel is maintaining position at the system's edge. They're not advancing or retreating." Commander Zethkar felt a strange unease creeping through his consciousness. Humans were known for their unpredictability, but this seemed excessive even for them. What are your tactical sensors showing? Standard readings, sir. The vessel appears to be a heavy cruiser class. Armor plating consistent with human military specifications. Energy signatures suggest conventional fusion reactors and standard defensive systems. Admiral Korax snorted dismissively. Enough of this theater. Order the fleet to advance. If they wish to die for their pride, we'll accommodate them. But Commander Zethkar hesitated. Something about the human captain's confidence bothered him. In his long military career, he had learned to trust his instincts, and those instincts were currently screaming warnings. Sir, Lieutenant Vexana prompted. Maintain position, Zethkar ordered. Begin deep scanning protocols. I want to know everything about that ship before we proceed. Commander, Admiral Korax protested. We're allowing them to dictate the engagement. This shows weakness. No, Zethkar replied slowly, his eyes fixed on the tactical display where the lone human ship waited patiently in the void. This shows wisdom. Because if there's one thing every species in this fleet should remember about humans, it's this. When they seem calm in the face of impossible odds, they usually know something we don't. The deep scanning protocols revealed nothing unusual at first. The UES Defiance appeared to be exactly what it seemed, a mid-sized human warship with conventional armaments and standard defensive capabilities. But Commander Zethkar's unease only grew as the minutes passed. Sir, Lieutenant Vexana reported, her voice carrying a note of confusion. Our sensors are detecting some unusual readings from the human vessel. Elaborate. The ship's mass readings are inconsistent. Our gravitational sensors suggest the vessel is significantly more massive than its visual profile indicates. Additionally, we're detecting trace amounts of exotic matter signatures. Admiral Korax leaned forward in his command throne. Exotic matter? What type? Unknown, sir. The signatures don't match anything in our databases. Ambassador Tithasel's collective voice rippled through the chamber like disturbed water. This could be a new human technology. Our intelligence reports have suggested they've been conducting research into advanced physics applications. Commander Zethkar activated his personal communication link to the fleet's science officer, Dr. Malakin, a Zarathi whose species possessed some of the most advanced analytical minds in the galaxy. Doctor, what's your assessment of these readings? The insectoid being's reply came through multiple vocal cords, creating a harmonious but alien sound. Commander, the mass discrepancy suggests the vessel may contain compressed matter or folded space technology. The exotic matter signatures are consistent with theoretical models of fourth-dimensional manipulation. In simple terms, Doctor, the ship may be larger on the inside than the outside. This statement sent a chill through the assembled commanders. Dimensional manipulation technology was theoretical at best among galactic civilizations. The energy requirements alone should have been impossible for a civilization as young as humanity. That's impossible, Admiral Korax declared. Humans have been spacefaring for barely 3 centuries. Our species have been exploring the galaxy for millennia, and we've never achieved stable dimensional manipulation. Dr. Malakin's response carried a note of scientific curiosity that made it somehow more disturbing. Perhaps impossibility is a relative concept where humans are concerned. Before anyone could respond, the communication array crackled to life again. Captain Chen's image reappeared, but now she was standing in what appeared to be a much larger space than before. The bridge visible behind her stretched far beyond what should have been possible within the ship's hull. Sorry for the brief interruption, Captain Chen said conversationally. I was consulting with my crew about your fleet composition. Quite impressive, really, though I notice you're hesitating to advance. Commander Zethkar found his voice. Your ship appears to possess some unusual characteristics. Captain, we're simply conducting a thorough analysis before proceeding. Ah, you noticed the dimensional expansion. Captain Chen nodded approvingly. Your sensors are more sophisticated than we expected. Yes, the Defiance incorporates some recent innovations in spatial engineering. Spatial engineering? Ambassador Tithasel's collective consciousness seemed to recoil at the concept. Such technology should require massive installations, entire planets' worth of resources, and power generation. Captain Chen smiled. And There was something predatory in the expression. Should require, yes. But humans have always had a talent for making the impossible merely difficult. She gestured to something off-screen, and the view expanded to show more of the ship's interior. What the alien commanders saw defied everything they understood about physics and engineering. The space was vast, clearly far larger than the external dimensions of the vessel. Corridors stretched into the distance, and through transparent walls, they could see what appeared to be entire factories and construction bays. This is one of our newer designs, Captain Chun explained casually. We call it a pocket dimension cruiser. The external hull contains a carefully constructed fold in space-time. The actual ship exists primarily in a compressed dimensional bubble. Lieutenant Vexana's hands were trembling as she worked her controls. Sir, if this is real, if they've actually achieved stable dimensional manipulation, then the ship could contain virtually anything. Any amount of firepower, any number of crew, any type of weapons system. The implications hit the alien commanders like a physical blow. They had prepared to face a human fleet, not a single vessel that could potentially contain an entire armada within its impossible interior. Admiral Korax was the first to recover his composure. Even if this technology exists, you're still one ship against our entire fleet. What can you possibly hope to achieve? Captain Chen's expression grew serious. Admiral, with respect, you're still thinking in terms of conventional warfare. Let me ask you something. When you assembled this fleet, what did you assume about human capabilities? We studied your military encounters, Commander Zethkar replied slowly. Your victories against the hegemony, your successful defense of the outer colonies, your expansion into contested space. We prepared for a formidable opponent. And what did those studies tell you about how humans approach apparently impossible situations? The chamber fell silent as the alien commanders contemplated the question. Human military history was filled with examples of impossible victories, of small forces defeating vastly superior enemies through tactics and technologies that seemed to emerge from nowhere. You adapt, Ambassador THYSSL said finally. Your species has an unusual capacity for rapid technological advancement under pressure. Exactly, Captain Chen nodded. And what do you think humanity has been doing since your ultimatum was issued? Did you expect us to simply accept defeat? Or did you expect us to find a way to turn this situation to our advantage? Dr. Malikan's harmonious voice carried a note of growing alarm. Commander, I'm detecting additional energy signatures from the human vessel. The exotic matter readings are increasing exponentially. On the main display, the UES Defiance remained exactly where it had been, looking deceptively peaceful against the star field. But now the sensors were registering something else. A growing distortion in space around the ship, barely visible, but unmistakably there. Captain, Commander Zethkar said carefully, what exactly is your ship capable of? Captain Chen's smile returned, but now it carried no warmth at all. Commander, that's exactly the wrong question to ask. The question you should be asking is this. What is humanity capable of when we have enough time to prepare? The distortion around the human ship suddenly intensified, and every sensor in the alien fleet began screaming warnings. Whatever was happening, it was just beginning. The space around the UES Defiance began to ripple like water disturbed by a stone. What had started as subtle distortions in the sensor readings became visible to the naked eye as reality itself seemed to bend and flex around the human vessel. Emergency protocols. Commander Zethkar barked. All ships, raise shields, and prepare for unknown attack patterns. Across the massive alien fleet, energy barriers flared to life as thousands of vessels readied themselves for combat. Weapon systems that could crack planets swiveled toward the lone human ship, but the targeting computers struggled to lock onto something that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Dr. Malikan's voice cut through the chaos, his harmonious tones now sharp with scientific fascination and terror. Commander, the spatial distortions are not weapons. They're gateways. Gateways to what? Admiral Korax demanded, his massive frame straining against his command harness as his ship's artificial gravity fluctuated in response to the dimensional disturbance. Unknown, but the energy signatures suggest they're stable wormholes. Multiple stable wormholes. On the main display, The distortions around the Defiance suddenly snapped into perfect geometric patterns. Circular apertures in space itself opened like eyes in the void, each one revealing glimpses of distant star fields. Through the largest gateway, something was moving. Lieutenant Vexana's voice rose to a near panic. "Sir, contacts emerging from the anomalies. Multiple contacts." The first ship to emerge from the central gateway was unlike anything in the galactic databases. Sleek and predatory, it moved with an organic grace that made even the most advanced alien vessels seem clumsy by comparison. Its hull seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal, and energy patterns danced across its surface in hypnotic spirals. But it was not alone. More ships emerged from the other gateways, each one different from the last. Some were massive constructs that dwarfed even the largest dreadnoughts in the alien fleet. Others were smaller but radiated power signatures that made seasoned commanders step back from their displays. One vessel appeared to be constructed entirely of crystalline structures that sang with harmonic frequencies that could be felt through the hulls of ships thousands of kilometers away. "Impossible," breathed Admiral Corax. "Our intelligence reports indicated humanity possessed perhaps 50 major warships total. Where did these vessels come from?" Captain Chen's voice carried a note of pride as she responded to their unspoken question. "Admiral, you made the same mistake that every species makes when they first encounter humanity. You assumed our limitations were permanent." The stream of ships emerging from the gateways continued. Vessels that seemed to be constructed from pure energy. Ships that phased in and out of visible reality. Craft that appeared to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Each new arrival defied conventional understanding of physics and engineering. Ambassador Tetracicel's collective consciousness was struggling to process what they were witnessing. These technologies, they represent centuries of advancement. How is this possible? Time dilation fields. Captain Chun explained with the patience of a teacher addressing particularly slow students. When you're working in compressed dimensional space, time moves differently. We've had subjective decades to prepare for this encounter. Dr. Malikan's analysis confirmed their worst fears. "Commander, the energy output from the assembled human fleet now exceeds our own by a factor of at least 30. And more ships are still arriving." Commander Zethkar watched in growing horror as the impossible human fleet continued to expand. Ships emerged that seemed to be constructed from materials that shouldn't exist. Vessels that appeared to violate the basic laws of physics simply by functioning. And, through it all, the original human ship, the modest UES Defiance, sat peacefully at the center of the growing armada like a queen surrounded by her court. "Captain Chun," Zethkar said slowly, "what are your intentions?" The human captain's expression grew thoughtful. "Our intentions, Commander, are exactly what they've always been. We want to be left alone to develop in peace. We want to explore the galaxy without interference. And we want to ensure that no species ever again makes the mistake of threatening humanity with ultimatums." One of the newly arrived human vessels, a ship that seemed to be constructed from interwoven streams of plasma, held in impossible configurations, drifted closer to the alien formation. As it moved, space itself seemed to bend around it, creating gravitational effects that made several of the smaller alien ships struggle to maintain their positions. "We're not here to conquer," Captain Chen continued. "We're not here to impose our will on other species or to demand tribute or submission. But we are here to demonstrate why threatening humanity is a very, very bad idea." Admiral Corax, despite his species' reputation for courage in the face of overwhelming odds, found himself leaning back in his command chair. "What do you want from us?" "Simple," Captain Chen replied. "Withdraw your fleets, rescind your ultimatum, and spread the word throughout the galaxy that humanity is not to be threatened again." "And if we refuse?" The question came from Commander YSS Tak of the Meridian Confederation, whose species had remained silent until now. Captain Chen's smile returned, but now it was the smile of a predator that had cornered its prey. "Commander, let me show you something." One of the human ships, a vessel that appeared to be constructed from crystalline matrices that pulsed with internal light, suddenly flared with energy. A beam of coherent force lanced out toward an asteroid field several light minutes away. The beam was barely visible, seeming more like a suggestion of power than an actual weapon. The asteroid field simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not vaporized, not blown apart. One moment it was there, a collection of rocks and ice that had existed for billions of years. The next moment, there was nothing but empty space where it had been. That was a demonstration, Captain Chen said quietly. One ship, one brief pulse of energy. Now imagine what our entire fleet could accomplish if we were truly threatened. The alien commanders stared at their displays in stunned silence. The power required to simply erase matter from existence was beyond anything they could comprehend. Even their planet-cracking weapons required enormous energy expenditures and left debris. This was something else entirely. The choice is yours, Captain Chen continued. You can withdraw peacefully and return to your respective territories with the knowledge that humanity seeks only to be left alone. Or you can escalate this situation and discover just how far human ingenuity can push the boundaries of what you consider possible. Commander Zethkar looked around the chamber at his fellow commanders. In their eyes, he saw the same realization that was dawning on him. They had come here expecting to face a young, aggressive species that needed to be contained. Instead, they had discovered a civilization that had transcended their understanding of technology and physics. The question now was whether they would be wise enough to retreat or foolish enough to discover what other impossibilities humanity had prepared for this encounter. The tension in the command chamber was suffocating. 12 species' greatest military minds faced an impossible decision, while outside the viewports, humanity's impossible fleet continued to grow. New ships emerged from the dimensional gateways with each passing minute, each more advanced and alien than the last. Commander Zethkar was about to signal a withdrawal when Admiral Korax's deep voice rumbled through the chamber. I refuse to be intimidated by parlor tricks and technological theatrics. The massive Bruton commander activated his fleet-wide communications. All Bruton vessels, advance to attack formation. Target the original human ship. If we destroy their dimensional anchor, their entire fleet may collapse. Admiral, wait. Zethkar called out, but it was too late. 37 Bruton dreadnoughts, each one a monument to military engineering accumulated over millennia of warfare, surged forward. Their hulls bristled with quantum torpedo launchers and plasma cannons capable of melting continents. The Brutons had never retreated from battle in their entire recorded history, and Admiral Korax was not about to start now. Captain Chen's expression on the communication screen shifted to one of genuine sadness. Admiral, please reconsider. You don't understand what you're about to face. I understand enough, Korax growled. No species, no matter how advanced, can violate the fundamental laws of physics without consequences. The Bruton fleet opened fire. Thousands of quantum torpedoes streaked through space toward the UES Defiance, each one carrying enough destructive force to level a city. Plasma beams that could cut through planetary cores lanced out in brilliant displays of destructive power. The combined firepower was enough to sterilize entire worlds. The weapons never reached their target. As the barrage approached the human fleet, something extraordinary happened. The space around the attacks began to shift and fold, creating what appeared to be impossible geometric patterns in the fabric of reality itself. The quantum torpedoes didn't explode or dissipate. They simply took a different path through space-time, their trajectories bending through dimensions that shouldn't exist. When the weapons emerged from the spatial folds, they were traveling in completely different directions. The Bruton fleet found themselves under attack by their own weapons, launched from impossible angles. Ships that should have been safe behind their own firing lines suddenly faced plasma beams emerging from directions that violated three-dimensional geometry. Impossible. Admiral Korax roared as his flagship shuddered under the impact of its own quantum torpedoes. Space doesn't work that way. Dr. Malikan's voice was barely audible, filled with scientific awe and terror. They're manipulating the topology of space-time itself. They're treating three-dimensional space like a sheet of paper that can be folded and twisted. But the demonstration wasn't over. One of the human vessels, a ship that seemed to be constructed from flowing streams of dark energy, began to move toward the Bruton formation. As it approached, the very structure of space around it became visible, revealing the underlying geometry that most species never suspected existed. The ship didn't fire weapons. It didn't launch missiles or activate energy beams. Instead, it simply adjusted the local space-time continuum. The Bruton dreadnoughts began to experience temporal dilation effects. From the alien fleet's perspective, the massive warships appeared to slow down, their movements becoming sluggish as if they were moving through thick liquid. But, from the Bruthans' perspective, the rest of the universe was accelerating around them. Admiral Corax watched in helpless fury as his fleet became trapped in a pocket of compressed time, unable to maneuver effectively while the human ships moved around them with casual ease. "Admiral," Captain Chen's voice carried a note of genuine regret. "Your ships are currently experiencing approximately 1/10 normal time flow. From your perspective, this conversation will seem to last hours. From our perspective, we have all the time we need to demonstrate why attacking humanity is inadvisable." Another human vessel approached the trapped Bruton fleet. This one appeared to be constructed from crystalline structures that resonated with harmonics that could be felt through hyperspace itself. As it drew near, the Bruton ships began to experience something unprecedented. Their hulls started to sing. The molecular bonds in the Bruton armor plating began to vibrate in perfect harmony with the frequencies emanating from the human ship. The metal didn't melt or break. It simply became fluid, flowing like water while maintaining its structural integrity. Weapon systems became useless as their components merged and separated in impossible ways. Life support systems continued to function, but their operations became visible as streams of energy that flowed through the liquid metal walls. "This is matter manipulation at the molecular level," Dr. Malikan reported, his harmonious voice cracking with strain. "They're controlling the fundamental forces that hold atoms together." Commander Zethkar realized that what they were witnessing wasn't warfare in any conventional sense. This was a demonstration of power so absolute that resistance was meaningless. The humans could have destroyed the entire alien fleet in moments, but instead they were carefully, methodically showing exactly how helpless their opponents were. Captain Chen's image appeared on screens throughout the alien fleet, addressing all the commanders simultaneously. "This is what humanity has become in the time since your ultimatum was issued. We've learned to manipulate space, time, matter, and energy in ways that your species consider impossible. But here's what's important for you to understand. This isn't the limit of our capabilities. This is just what we're comfortable showing you." The human ship manipulating the Bruton fleet suddenly stopped its demonstration. The temporal effects ceased, the molecular harmonics faded, and the alien vessels returned to normal. Admiral Corax's dreadnoughts were undamaged, but fundamentally changed. Every crew member on every ship had experienced something that challenged their basic understanding of reality. "We could have destroyed you," Captain Chen continued. "We could have erased your fleet from existence, trapped you in temporal loops, or simply made you forget this encounter ever happened. But we chose not to, because that's not who humanity is." She gestured to the impossible fleet surrounding her ship. "Every vessel you see here was constructed by humans who were given an ultimatum. Humans who were told to surrender or face destruction. And this is our response. Not conquest, not destruction, but a simple message: leave us alone." Admiral Corax's voice came through the communication array, subdued and shaken. What do you want from us?" "The same thing we wanted when this started," Captain Chen replied. "Withdraw your fleets, rescind your ultimatum, and understand that humanity will not be threatened again." Commander Zethkar looked around the command chamber at his fellow aliens. In their eyes, he saw the same realization that was settling into his own consciousness. They had made a fundamental error in judgment. They had assumed that humanity's rapid expansion and military successes were signs of dangerous aggression that needed to be contained. Instead, they had discovered a species that had transcended conventional limitations through pure ingenuity and determination. A species that could have conquered the galaxy, but chose instead to simply defend itself. The question now was whether the assembled fleet would be wise enough to accept humanity's offer of peaceful coexistence, or whether their pride would demand further demonstrations of humanity's impossible capabilities. The silence that followed Captain Chen's words stretched across the void like a living thing. 12 species' greatest military commanders faced a decision that would reshape the galaxy's understanding of power and possibility. Commander Zethkar was the first to break the silence. Captain Chun, I speak for the Vorthan Empire when I say that we acknowledge the futility of our position. We will withdraw our forces and rescind our ultimatum. One by one, the other commanders followed suit. The Keltharians, with their silver skin shimmering with what might have been embarrassment. The Zarathi, their insectoid voices harmonizing in what their species considered a formal surrender. The Meridian Confederation, the Altarian Collective, the Zephyrian Trade Consortium, each proud species humbled by the demonstration of humanity's transcendent capabilities. Admiral Corax remained silent until only he and the Sindari had not responded. Finally, his deep voice rumbled through the communication array. The Bruton Empire has never retreated from battle. We have never surrendered to a superior force. Captain Chen nodded respectfully. Admiral, I understand the weight of what I'm asking. Your species' honor is legendary throughout the galaxy. But, Corax continued slowly, we have also never been fools. What you've shown us today, this isn't warfare. This is evolution in action. The Bruton Empire will withdraw. All eyes turned to Ambassador HFY Sci-Fi, whose collective consciousness had remained ominously quiet throughout the demonstrations. When she finally spoke, her gel-like form rippled with complex patterns that indicated deep internal debate among the thousands of minds that comprised her being. The Sindari Collective has experienced something unprecedented today, she said finally. Our collective consciousness allows us to perceive reality from multiple perspectives simultaneously. But what we have witnessed defies even our expanded awareness. She paused, her biosuit speakers crackling slightly. We wish to ask Captain Chen a question that goes beyond military considerations. I'm listening, Chen replied. Humanity has achieved what our species would consider godlike capabilities. Matter manipulation, dimensional engineering, temporal control. What prevents you from simply reshaping the galaxy according to your will? Captain Chen's expression grew thoughtful. Ambassador, that's perhaps the most important question anyone has asked today. And the answer is simple. Because that's not who we are. She gestured to something off-screen, and the view expanded to show more of the Defiance's impossible interior. But now they could see something that hadn't been visible before, humans working alongside aliens. Species they recognized and others they didn't, all collaborating on projects that seemed to blend technology and art in ways that transcended conventional understanding. When we developed these technologies, Captain Chen explained, we faced that exact temptation. We could reshape matter at will. We could manipulate space and time. We could make ourselves the rulers of the galaxy. The view shifted again, showing what appeared to be vast gardens existing within the ship's dimensional folds. Ecosystems from dozens of worlds thrived in impossible spaces, tended by beings from across the galaxy who had chosen to work with humanity rather than against it. But we realized something important, Chen continued. Power without wisdom leads to tyranny. Control without consent breeds rebellion. And forcing our will on others would make us exactly the kind of species that deserves to be stopped. Dr. Malikan's harmonious voice carried a note of scientific curiosity. Captain, how do you prevent the corruption that such power inevitably brings? By remembering where we came from, Chun answered simply. Humans spent most of our history as the underdog. We know what it's like to face impossible odds, to be threatened by superior forces, to have our survival depend on our ingenuity and determination. That perspective doesn't change just because we've developed advanced technology. She touched a control, and new images appeared on the screens throughout the alien fleet. Scenes of human colonies where different species worked together, shared knowledge, and built something greater than any of them could achieve alone. This is what humanity offers, Chen said. Not dominion, not conquest, but partnership. We've learned to transcend the limitations of physics because we had to. But we've also learned that the greatest achievements come from cooperation, not domination. Commander Zethkar found himself strangely moved by the human captain's words. And if species choose not to cooperate, if they remain hostile? Captain Chen's expression hardened slightly. Then, they discover what happens when you threaten a species that has learned to make the impossible routine. But we always prefer the first option. The communication array crackled with a new signal. Commander YSS TAC of the Meridian Confederation spoke hesitantly. Captain, would humanity be willing to share some of these technologies? For peaceful purposes? Already happening, Chin replied with a smile. We have exchange programs with 17 different species, shared research initiatives with 12 more. Knowledge grows when it's shared, and we've never believed in hoarding discoveries that could benefit everyone. Ambassador Tichaisel's collective consciousness rippled with patterns that indicated intense internal discussion. The Sindari Collective would like to formally request inclusion in these exchange programs. Approved, Chen responded immediately. Your species' multiple perspective consciousness could provide insights we've never considered. Admiral Korax's voice carried a note of something that might have been humility. The Bruton Empire, we have always believed that strength was the ultimate value. But what you've shown us today suggests that intelligence and cooperation might be more powerful than any weapon. They are, Chen confirmed. But strength still has its place, Admiral. Sometimes peaceful species need protection from those who choose conquest over cooperation. Perhaps the Brutons could find honor in that role. One by one, the species that had come to threaten humanity began requesting inclusion in the human sphere of cooperation. Not as subjects or subordinates, but as partners in an expanded community that transcended the limitations that had previously defined galactic civilization. Commander Zethkar watched as the massive alien fleet began to disperse, not in defeat, but in a strange sort of victory. They had come to impose limitations on humanity's expansion and instead discovered that humanity's true expansion had been into realms of possibility they had never imagined. Captain Chun, Zethkar said as his own ships prepared to depart. One final question. How long did it really take humanity to develop these capabilities? Captain Chin's smile was enigmatic. Commander, when you're working in compressed dimensional space with accelerated time fields and collaborative input from the best minds of multiple species, let's just say that the 3 weeks between your ultimatum and this encounter were more than sufficient. As the alien fleet departed, the impossible human vessels began disappearing back through their dimensional gateways. Soon, only the original UES Defiance remained, looking once again like nothing more than a modest cruiser against the star field. But throughout the galaxy, word would spread of the day when 12 species learned that threatening humanity was not just inadvisable, it was impossible. And, more importantly, they would spread the word that humanity offered something far more valuable than conquest, the chance to transcend limitations that had previously seemed absolute. The age of human expansion had truly begun, but not through force of arms. Instead, it would spread through the simple but revolutionary idea that the impossible was simply another problem to be solved through human ingenuity, determination, and the wisdom to know that power shared is power multiplied. In the vastness of space, the UES Defiance turned toward home, its mission complete. Behind it, the galaxy would never be the same.